So first things first, thank you for coming. We're really happy to be here with all of you. On est super content d'être ici avec tout le monde. We managed to sold out our event. This is our first time since the post-COVID area, so a little round of applause for that. So we had about 70 people that bought tickets, and we're really happy about that.
All right. So the event will be in English. Our speaker presentations will be in English. It's the official language of the aerospace and engineering world. But rest assured, we all speak French. If vous avez des questions, besoin d'une précision, interrogation, il n'y a aucun problème. Vous pouvez arrêter le speaker ou poser vos questions à la séance de questions en français. There's absolutely no problem for that. So sans plus tarder, on va commencer officiellement. We're going to be starting officially now. So first things first, I would like to thank our both speakers. So here we have GP with us. GP is from the TSB. I'm going to be reading the long bios later on with the full presentation. And here we have Benoit from Bell in Maribel. So a big round of applause for them, please. Thank you. And we also have here our ex-Bell employee, Donald Falado. He's our audio-video technician for the night, so thank you to him as well. And of course, thank you to all of you, our VFS members, friends, maybe colleagues, or friends of friends that are here tonight. This event wouldn't be possible without you. So, VFS. Does everybody know about VFS? Anyone doesn't know anything about VFS? Okay. So VFS, Vertical Flight Society, we're a non-profit organization. We're here to promote the vertical flight in all aspects. And tonight, we're here to specifically promote safety. And how are we going to be doing so? We're going to be doing so by talking about helicopter accidents. So our presentation tonight is called From Crash to Clarity, Understanding Helicopter Accidents, with our two speakers, GP and Benoit. So first, a bit about ourselves. So this is our chapter. So Vertical Flight Society is a large association that was historically known as the American Helicopter Society, AHS, and is today a world organization. Most chapters are located in the United States, but we have a few chapters around the world and one here in Montreal-Ottawa. So this is our chapter, your local chapter. So if you ever have questions and you want to reach out to us, these are people that are in the room today that you can talk to, approach, and ask any question. We're here to help and answer your questions. So we have Duff. He's our new region director from the Americas region. Sadly, he couldn't be here tonight. He was sick with the flu. So we're thinking about him tonight. We have Tuva, our vice president of Americas. So Tuva's in the back, I think. We have Wes, the interim chapter president, treasurer, Mathieu Belland, interim chapter VP, education chair, Ken, who's our chapter publicity chair, myself, so I'm your MC tonight and your membership chair. We have our McGill chapter, student chapter, so we have our folks down there. Zach, if you want to get up, just so people see you. So right now, there are only active student chapter. We're really happy about that, and we're hoping to have more university chapters. There used to be one at Concordia that was active. So if you know people that want to get involved, please get in touch with us. And then we have our chapter officers, Ana Maria. You might have seen her at the entry with Frédéric. We have Stéphane, Stéphanie, who's not here tonight, and Maxime, who's our chapter web director. So this is your chapter roster, and we're always looking for more people. If you want to help, please give us a call or send us an email. So I talk a bit about this. Our mission in 3 simple statements is first to increase the interest of vertical flight all across Canada, specifically around the region of Montreal. But since we're the only chapter in Canada, we also make ourselves our duty to represent the whole country. We want also to create a platform where we can facilitate networking, collaboration. So tonight is a good example of this. We're all here to talk about a common subject, which is vertical flight. And by doing so, we do it by providing learning opportunities through these conferences that we have. Some of them are more informal, as tonight, and some of them are very formal, like our annual VFS forum that takes place every year. So this is our email, admin@mtl.vtol.org. If you have any question, you want to help, you're interested of becoming a speaker, you want to share your knowledge, please send us a message. We're always here to listen to what you have to bring to the community. So a few examples of our chapter in action. So last year was a very busy year for our chapter, since we have the 80th annual forum for VFS, which was taking place in the city of Montreal. It was the first time since 10 years. So it was a big event. Usually it's somewhere in the United States. And this time we got it in our own city. So that was in May 2024. That was a big event. A lot of people, a lot of papers, a lot of interesting discussion, eVTOL stuff, and a lot of stuff on helicopters as well. A bit in the same period, we had the Aero Montreal Forum, which is kind of the international aerospace conference, one of the most renowned in the Montreal area. We also participate to student activities. So here we have a student case competition at McGill, where some people from our chapter were there to judge some designs that were done in a competition. So we also have other events. In April 2024, we were in Ottawa. So yeah, we're in Montreal, but we're also the Ottawa chapter. So we try to also have events in the Ottawa region. So we were at JDMS Canada, and we're talking about how to make sure that your coasts are safe and guarded. And also in February, so a year ago, we had our helicopter icing conference in our Mirabel Bell facility. And that was another example of how we stick to our mission and we try to promote vertical flight. So tonight's agenda, as I said, we have our two speakers, JP, who is a senior accident investigator. He works for Transportation Safety Board of Canada, and his presentation will be on the review of vertical lift related accidents that have occurred in the last 4 years. So he will be presenting for about 30 minutes, then with 15 minutes questions. And after that, at about 7:30, we'll have a short program break. So we have 10 minutes, go to the bathroom, order more food, order more beer. And then we'll gather back again at 7:40 for the second session, which will be with Benoit. And Benoit is Principal Flight Safety Officer. He's also Air Safety Investigator at Bell Textron Canada. And today he's going to be presenting on the air safety investigations topic. So a bit about our first speaker, Jean-Pierre, or GP. So Jean-Pierre, also known as GP, has been a senior accident investigator with the Transportation Safety Board, TSB of Canada, located in Ottawa since 2015. GP retired from the Royal Canadian Air Force as a Lieutenant Colonel in 2015 after almost 28 years of military service as a pilot and officer, which included operational and training deployments as well as posting to the Directorate Air Simulation and Training, Directorate Flight Safety, Directorate Air Strategic Plans, and 1st Canadian Air Division. GP has spent 35 years in the aviation industry and has a Master of Science in Safety and Accident Investigation from Cranfield University and a Bachelor of Arts from the Royal Military College of Canada. So please give a hand for our first speaker, GP.
Check this. Is this a march? Can you hear me in the back? It's all good? Hi. So I'm at Duff at Charm School. Some people call it Royal Military College. His office is kitty corner ours, our lab in Ottawa. And he asked if I could speak here tonight. So first of all, just to get an idea of the room, can I see a show of hands as to how many pilots I have in the room? Oh, all types. I need all the backup I need. Okay, good. He said, yeah, you're just talking to a room of engineers and technicians. I'm like, okay. So that brings me back to the first time I deployed. I flew Sea Kings, so first time on ship. My old crusty major says, okay, and I was like fresh out of pilot, had my wings, super proud. He says, okay, here's the deal. Get rid of the rank. Your name's JP. And you're going to talk all to the engineers and the techs by their first names. And you're going to be on your best behavior. You're going to say please and thank you, because your engine tech knows more about the engine than you do. Your avionics tech knows more about the aircraft than you do. Actually, all the techs will know more about the aircraft than you do, or ever will. And with that, hopefully, they'll bring you back. So after flying Sea Kings, it was a good, relevant discussion. Second thing he told me was when we got on the flight, for the first flight, he said, okay, sit down, strap in. Here's a checklist, read this, and don't touch nothing. So I'll read this, I'll try not to touch nothing, and hopefully we'll get through this nice and easy. So I work at the TSB. I've been an investigator for about, between the military and TSB for about 15 years. I've been to like nice, glorious locations like Alexandria, Hilda Madeleine, Kelowna, Cold Lake, Bagot, Gander, Afghanistan, all that stuff. And I'm the TSB. So the TSB, we're the federally run government agency that investigates accidents. We're multimodal. We deal in aviation, marine, rail, and pipeline. And we focus specifically on, or typically on, government commercial operators. It's not to say we don't do the private sector, but that is our main core mandate. And we do that by conducting independent investigations. I'll get to that a bit later. Try to find safety deficiencies to identify findings, causes, and contributing factors, and then make recommendations to either the manufacturers, the operators, and hopefully the regulator, so Transport Canada, so that we can make meaningful changes to procedures and practices, rules, and regulations. Okay, a safety recommendations like all pilots were briefed or all technicians were briefed lasts about 24 hours till the next shift change, and then everyone's forgotten about it. But changing a rule or regulation that hopefully is a bit more long-lasting. So the TSB was based on a law. It's called the Canadian Transportation Accident Investigation Safety Board Act. So we call it CATSB. That's the act that gives us our powers to investigate. So some of our powers include stuff like search and seizure, restraining people from a site. So if I come to an accident site and you see yellow tape, then we can have the police enforce who goes in and who goes out, keep media away, keep family next of kin away. It gives us the ability to knock on Bell's door or any other operator or OEM and say, hi, we'd like the publications on this type of aircraft. So that allows us to not only look at the aircraft, but allows us to look at their SMS programs, their training programs, organizational issues as well. It gives us powers to summon medical records, attend autopsies, and stuff like that. So we've got a pretty good, strong list of powers that help us assign or help us investigate. We're about 220 to 240 across Canada. We have 5 board members, therefore the Transportation Safety Board. Those 5 board members, including a chair, are the ones that approve all of our reports, all of our communication products. And they report directly to Parliament. So we are not Transport Canada. We work with Transport Canada, but we do not fall under their purview at all. Okay? So our head office is in Gatineau. We have a lab right by the airport in Ottawa, and we have regional offices across the country. The one here in Montreal is in Dorval, just 2 minutes from the airport. And this allows our investigators to respond fairly quickly to major occurrences at the major airports, marine and rail locations across the country. We have a reporting system, whether we get operators calling us, Nav Canada, the police, whatever. We have anywhere from 35 to 4,000 reported incidents, accidents a year. Of those, again, these are multimodal. We'll investigate 70, and of those, the air branch will look probably around 40 reports, 40 investigations across the country every year. Myself as an investigator right now, I'm doing an Airbus 350. Had a tail strike in January. I'm still in the report writing phase. Okay, so it takes a long time. My workload, I had last year, I had 2 smaller occurrences, one a helicopter, one a Cessna. So the work varies. I could be working with Airbus 1 year and then Cessna and Heli Explore or Bell the next year. Our occurrences are classified or tiered. So a class 1 is a large investigation. It's a safety issue that spans, that's pretty much wide across the country. So one I can think of is we had an air taxi safety investigation. They looked at air taxi and aerial work across Canada that captured both fixed wing and rotary wing. So that's a long, complex issue. Typically takes 3 to 5 years to complete those. Class 2 is something with like a major carrier. So Air Canada decides to, or Air France decide to have a major overrun at one of the runways, or Amazon, let's say, in Vancouver, hypothetically. That will be a large investigation where we'll probably push out recommendations to Transport Canada or the operator. A Class 3 are our typical investigations. There may or may not be fatalities, but we will push out findings, contributing factors, and may or may not have recommendations to transport. And I'll talk about one Class 3 today, and I'll talk about a Class 4, limited in scope. Really, we deploy, we collect data, we analyze a little bit, and we push out a safety message. There's really no recommendations, there's really no causals, but we had to capture those incidences where we deployed and went to see what happened, and then kind of tell the Canadian public that we're actually working, because we would deploy a lot, and those investigations used to just become data collection exercises. But about 3 to 5 years ago, we introduced these Class 4s, so now we're producing more reports like that. Class 5s are simply data gathering. So Air Canada declared a pan-pan emergency because they had a flight attendant that couldn't continue on his duties, or hydraulic system failure. They had a problem with the flaps and they landed safely. So because they declared an emergency, that falls in the criteria. There's other criteria as well. There's no fatalities, there's no hull loss, there's no aircraft damage. These would be classified as Class 5s, and then just captured in our database. Class 6, because we are part of ICAO, we deal with the foreign countries a lot. So we'll deal with any accident that has Canadian operated or aircraft that are manufactured or major components manufactured in Canada. So an aircraft, Bell helicopter in Brazil, or an aircraft with Pratt & Whitney engines, those would be assigned to us for data collection or for investigative support as well. So who do we look at and who can we talk to for information? Well, the list is pretty long. And again, the Catesby Act gives us our powers to actually summon people for interview. So the first approach is, hi, I'm JP, I'm the accident investigator. I know you were involved in this occurrence. Somehow I'd like to interview you. And we try to get voluntary information. We try to explain our mandate that we're a safety-based organization, and our goal is really to prevent reoccurrence. And it's a safety mandate. It's not criminal, it's not liable. So I would prefer that approach so that you can speak freely and openly, as opposed to issuing a court summons and telling you have to come to my office at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning for an interview. It makes it a bit more police-like state, and it's not really the approach we want to take. One thing the Catesby Act does protect, it protects a few things. It protects stuff like cockpit voice recorders. So whenever you hear the actual voices of the pilots on TV, it's probably an American or foreign occurrence. It very rarely does the TSB release cockpit voice recorders. Our legal department goes through, and our act allows for the protection of cockpit voice recorders, and they're really only released in camera, in the judge's chambers, when the judge decides that the release of that information is better for the case than would be for safety. It has happened, yes, but very rarely. So cockpit voice recorders are protected. So are witness statements. So you write me an email or you call me on the phone and I record it. That recording and that statement is privileged. and all that is also protected. So I don't release it. The only people at the TSB that see it are my managers and up the chain, those directly involved in the investigation. But I don't release it to your company, the media, your family, or whatever. So whatever you tell me, either in an interview or via email or piece of paper or napkin, that's protected under the TSB Act. And that hopefully allows us to explain to our witnesses, yes, you can talk freely, it's staying within the investigation. When it comes time to take that information, we de-identify the information when it comes into the report. So when Benoit tells me, yeah, I saw the helicopter and the rotor blade hit like 7 times, hit the tail 7 times. Well, the report doesn't say, well, Benoit saw the helicopter. It says, it was observed that the rotor blade hit the tail rotor 7 times. So we try and protect our witnesses. So this is the eye chart on the whole investigation process from initial up where the occurrence happened to public release of a full report. So the first phase really is the field phase, but before we get to that, we actually have the call. So we get a call, we hold standby. There's a standby guy in every region across Canada that holds the phone. So we answer the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. And we'll find out what happened. And then we start making an assessment on, is there a hull loss? Is there an actual crash? Do we have fatalities? How many? How big can this get in terms of public? How many operators or stakeholders are involved? Is this a commercial or private operator? And how many Canadians does this affect? Okay. So private operator who flew into the ground because it was bad weather and no one else was flying, but he decided to fly and he survived. We're not deploying for that. Private farmer who took off from his grass strip and bounced on landing, nosed over and fell over and his passenger died, we may not deploy for that. One of the key things we're looking for is a safety payoff. If we deploy or expend resources to investigate, will we learn something in the aviation, for the aviation industry? Pilots flying into bad weather is a well-known, well-documented event. Sad, but true. We may not investigate that occurrence. Air Canada slides off a runway, or Amazon cargo jet slides off the runway in Vancouver, shuts down Vancouver for a day and a half. We've got a team there for sure. Okay, so it depends. We typically send out a pilot and a technical investigator right off the bat. 2 guys go. They deal with the site survey, photography, measurements, collecting witness lists, and whoever else we're going to talk to. First responders, police, fire, rescue, EMS. During this time, my boss is making an assessment on what kind of classification this occurrence could be. Field phase could last anywhere from a day to 2 weeks. Little Cessna that crashed, yes, 1 fatality, 1 survivor. I was there for 7 hours from 1 in the afternoon till 8 p.m. at night. Most of that time was waiting for the coroner. The boys and girls out in Vancouver were there all weekend. I think they're going on day 4 or 5 right now, talking to the crew, the aircraft, the airport, ATC, etc. So the field phase is a data collection phase. We're fact finding. We're trying to suck as much information as we can from the operator, from the crew, from the witnesses, ATC, radar, whatever kind of technology that we can, flight recorders, onboard recorders, lightweight recorders, GoPro cameras, what have you, to try and recreate the event. And we'll bring that back to our labs. Bigger pieces we'll bring back to the lab in Ottawa. And then we proceed to the exam analysis phase. So we'll have a look at what we can see in the field, and then we'll come back and all the bright boys and girls at the lab with all their fancy tools and microscopes can figure out how stuff broke and why it broke. So then we'll have the tech side, and then we'll have the ops side, and both will be trying to drill down. We'll lay out a sequence of events. We'll identify safety significant issues. We'll drill those down to see if we can get to the underlying factor or root cause. And then we get to a report writing phase, kind of mesh that all together to push out a report. We're the government of Canada, so even though I've got 15 years of experience in writing reports, apparently I can't write anything. It needs to be reviewed by a tech writer, then my manager, then my director, then the board. Then it gets sent back to designated reviewers. So if I'm investigating a Bell product, it's going to go back to Bell. Bell's going to have 60 days or 30 days to look at my report and say, no, the Jet Ranger does not have 3 blades. Jeep, you got it wrong. The Jet Ranger has 2 blades. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. I got my mistake. Sorry, I had 2 blades. So I changed my report for 2 blades. That's one comment. Maybe I got 20 comments from Bell. Maybe I got 40 from Transport. Probably got another 20 from the pilot. So we look through all those comments, amend our report where we can, and then we publish a report au Canada en français. Has to go to translation. There's another 6 weeks, and then it comes out. So you can see how an investigation can take a long time. So the option is you can have a report quickly, so I can come out of the field phase and I say, yeah, I can think this is what happened, and give you something like that, and I can be completely wrong. Or we can take the time and do it properly and have a factually correct report. Our big hammer is our recommendations. So they're typically aimed at Transport Canada to change rules and regulations. They could be aimed at operators, manufacturing companies as well. And they typically get categorized. The fully categorized, fully satisfactory kind of gets closed and said, yay, we got our job done. An unsat is something we've proposed to Transport Canada that says something like, change the rules for instrument flying for pilots, please, for helicopters, because the weather limits are too low. They come back and they say, oh, well, we think they're just fine. Well, that ends up being unsatisfactory for us because we keep seeing accidents. A few words you'll hear in the accident investigation world is IIC, so investigate in charge. So that typically be someone from the TSB, a pilot or technical investigator. An ACREP is typically the foreign representative. So I'm dealing with Airbus. I have an investigator from the Bureau d'Enquête from France, who's the French ACREP. If we were working in a foreign country, that person from the TSB would be the ACREP. And the observer and the TAs work for the ACREP in supporting the occurrence, or they work for the IIC in the domestic context. An observer could be anyone identified by the TSB that has subject matter expertise that could help us, and they're given certain status, certain privileges. They can attend the site, they can attend lab testing. They're subject to having a look at factual information, so they could look at all the flight data. And a technical advisor is specifically that. Someone's very specific in his specialty trade or work, and we need something specific from that person. Here's the Gucci engineering stuff. There's our lab. This is all you do. I'm not going to read the slide, but a whole bunch of smart folks there. There was about 6 engineers, 2 techs, media specialists, and a few AMEs. And they're the ones that really help us figure out kind of how stuff broke. We also have a recorders and vehicle performance. And again, remember, we're multimodal, whereas some of our guys may have an aerospace or engineering degree. They could be working a marine or rail occurrence as well. Matter of fact, our 2 strongest guys are both hardcore aeronautical engineers, and they ended up working on TSB's contribution to Titan, the submersible that imploded there. And they can help us, they really take the flight data that we have. For example, this Mitsubishi was Ile de la Madeleine crash with politician Monsieur Lapierre. I should know that, I was there. But they were able to do a flight video of the occurrence. We had a lightboard recorder. Wasn't crash worthy, but it survived. Gave us 2 hours of cockpit communication, so I knew exactly what was going on. We meshed it up with this, and it gave us a immediate understanding of what happened for that occurrence. So good work from those guys there. They'll take the flight recorders, burn, damage, and stuff like that. They'll take iPhones and they'll try and recover as much as they can. They have the tools to do that kind of stuff. So that's about the TSB. When Duff asked me, so there's a little disclaimer with the front slide that says I'm looking at 4 years of accident investigation. Duff asked me to see, what can we do like vertical lift wise. So I said, okay, so you want helicopter accidents? It's like, okay. I can't really talk of accidents or investigations that are in progress. So if something happened in the last year or two, can't really talk. Those investigations are still going. So I looked at 2020 to about last September, so about 4 years, 8 months. I have about 40 occurrences, and they were split evenly. I had like 13 that were really weather related, like bad weather, they crashed. 13 that were pilot decision-making errors, slinging, dynamic rollover, poor flying, bad decision-making from the pilot. And then what I figured might interest this crowd more is more of the technical stuff, stuff that broke, where the pilot were basically just along for the ride. So, all the information here, I'll present this next one. It's a class 4, so it's very limited in scope. It's only 4 to 8 pages. There's a copy of the report if you want to have a gander of what an actual report looks like. These are the class 4s, and this is the class 3. It's got about 40 pages there. That's the next occurrence. And I'll read to my script so I don't mess anything up because everything's taken from the report. So on 17 June 21, Helicopter Transport Services Delta Yankee Zulu, Abel 214, was doing fire suppression and with a water bucket and a long line. Pilot had done about 45 drops that day. Pilot was good to go. He had about 8,400 hours, about 2,000 on this aircraft type. And on his way back to refuel, he had a vibration in tail rotor pedals and grinding noises. Moments later, the 42 and 90 degree box oil pressure enunciator caution lights illuminated, and there was an audible engine overspeed noise. Helicopter yawed to the right and pitched down. So bad. So after attempting auto rotation, the helicopter landed on its left skid gear with almost no forward speed. ELT activated, there was no fire. Helicopter came to rest, leaning on the left in boggy terrain. Skid gear cross tubes have been pushed 2 feet to the right. And the trailing edge of one tail rotor blade was damaged. However, there's no indication from the tail rotor was rotating at impact. So that's what we'll look at. We'll look at the tail rotor blades. If the blades are pristine, chances are it was not turning. Because something that hits trees and branches will disintegrate and will have damage. Told you about the pilot. The aircraft had no known defects before the flight, and the AMEs that were interviewed all had their courses and licensings and ratings, etc. So that's the tail rotor drive shaft. We all know, or hopefully, there's a bunch of drive shaft segments. I don't have the pointer doesn't work. There's these hanger assemblies that hold them up. 1, 2, 3 couplings, and then there's 42 and a 90 degree gearboxes that changes the drive shaft direction to actually get to the tail rotor blades. All of this was secured, and all this part aft was still intact, but this was loose here. That part there. The first drive shaft segment, this guy here, exhibited rotational scoring as a result of flailing and contact with the components in the fuselage. The number one coupling had remained intact. The remainder of the tail rotor drivetrain was contiguous from the crown gear coupling and number two coupling assembly to the tail rotor. So they looked at the number two coupling assembly. In this case here, the forward flange of the spine coupling, oh, no, that one there, number 15 there, is bolted to the aft end of the first drive shaft segment from the last line. The spine coupling houses and meshes with the crown gear coupling, the next one over, which has an output shaft that extends through the seal holder, item 12, of that one there. A retainer ring, that bad boy, should normally secure the seal holder and crown gear coupling within the spine coupling. So this ring here secures this and this in here. Got me so far? I had to teach this to my kid to make sure I understood it. So the retainer ring was found lying loose in the fuselage compartment at the crash site. The seal holder had exited the spine coupling and was loose on the shaft of the crown gear coupling. The retainer ring secures all that together, and the dimensions of everything is the groove is that wide, and the actual ring should be that thick, and it left a free space of about that much. So with the help of the lab or folks from the OEM, we get to these kind of measurements and figure out that that retainer ring can either move or FOD can get in there and pop the retainer ring out. The retainer ring out, everything comes loose. So the two coupling assembly had undergone regular servicing in accordance with the Bell maintenance schedule. Several daily inspections had been carried out before the flight, but the daily inspection check sheet from the operator did not call for an independent inspection of this drive shaft coupling assembly. So the investigation concluded that for an undetermined reason, so we couldn't determine if it was FOD or if, because it was class 4, we didn't go into the manufacture of the ring to see if the ring was manufactured properly. It's very limited in scope. Subsequent movement of the main rotor transmission resulted in actual movement of the drive shaft, the seal holder, and ultimately the crown gear coupling exited the spine coupling, at which point the tail rotor drive shaft separated, which resulted in loss of tail rotor thrust, and consequently yaw control was lost. The investigation noted that without the use of a visual inspection, and such as a mirror, verification, or with a measuring device, the inspection of the installed retainer ring is hampered by the proximity of the bearing hanger. So, because it's a class 4, we only produce safety messages, and they kind of come out something like this. And we hope that the operator will take steps to address the issue. And again, because it's a class 4, limited in scope, we have limited teeth, I would say, to make some changes. So we push on either the operator or the OEMs to make changes. In this case, HTS grounded their fleet while the investigation was in progress. Their DI checklist was amended, and they produced a handout on their training course. Because this affected loss of tail rotor and pilot flying abilities, I think because they slowed down a bit too slow, and then they lost the ability to properly auto-rotate. They had more training for the maintaining of airspeed during a tail rotor emergency, and their ground training was amended with more stuff on loss of tail rotor effectiveness. So that's a class 4. A class 3 is a bit more detailed, and now you guys are all investigators and are all going to deploy because we just got a call, and this helicopter crashed an hour ago west of Vancouver Island. So pack your bags. The flight Montreal to Vancouver is at 6:20. tomorrow morning. Need to book a hotel tonight and a rental car. Oh, by the way, yeah, 6:20 means you got to be at the airport by 5. Got to leave home by 4. That means we're waking up at 3:30 tomorrow morning with your go bag that's already packed. Off we go. By the time we get there, it'll be 10 o'clock. We land. Get to the site. It'll be 1, 2 o'clock. It's December or November. We have about 3 hours of light. So we just got to start measuring and taking photos, and this is what we have. So as an advisor or as someone from the OEM that comes to help me on an investigation, this is sort of what I need from my technical experts. Because it has to go as a factually correct statement in a published report. So some of the sentences that I'm reading come from the tech reports or the lab report. So this is all we know right now is this, okay? And before we all start blaming the pilot that broke your machine, okay, remember we're looking for factually correct statements to support our report. So first line, all the helicopter debris was located within an 80-foot radius of the fuselage. 1 minute, really already? Okay. Fuselage came to rest on its upper side, inverted, with nose down attitude. Yep. Tail boom was severed in the moment at the mounts. Yep. The nose had sustained some impact damage. Cockpit was partially crushed. Yep. The remainder of the fuselage tail boom largely intact, and the major components still installed in their normal positions. We have a vertical fin damaged by the tail rotor blades. We have a tail rotor drive shaft damaged by the main rotor, both at 15 inches, and a tail rotor drive shaft missing. Again, 15 inches from the aft of the tail rotor. This damage is consistent with the main rotor blade striking the tail rotor drive shaft. Continuity among the engine, transmission, tail rotor assembly was all verified and all good to go. Rotor hub was found. Main rotor blades were still attached. And I'm kind of speeding up because I've got a minute left. And so this is the stuff we're measuring. We're trying to figure out what was turning, what was not turning, what hit what. Okay? And then we'll bring pieces back to the lab. And then we'll measure. And here in this case, we'll find that we have indents on the mast from the stops. Yeah, so we have damage on one side, and on the 180 degrees of the other side, we have more damage indicating of mast bump or rotor flapping in a low G condition. And we have a fuel in the off position, but that's broken, but we don't know how it got there. Also, my ops team working on weather, operational procedures, flight analysis, GPS, flight data, all that stuff. And they kind of figure out that weather was bad at the time that they were flying. And as a result of us doing our sequence of events, our technicians, the information we get on the aircraft and the information we get from the ops team, interview with the pilots, we decided to look at these factors in the investigation. It basically gives us to this kind of text here. So at 9:46 p.m., while cruise portion of the flight, the helicopter entered wind shear and experienced a sudden dramatic right roll, nose down pitch, while traveling at a ground speed of 73 knots on a track of approximately 110. The helicopter violently pitched nose down, began a rapid right roll. The cyclic was momentarily pulled from the second pilot's hand due to the aircraft's violent rapid movement. The helicopter rolled close to inverted. During this loss of control, the PIC joined the second pilot on the controls to attempt a recovery. They applied max aft cyclic in the recovery attempt. During this period, the helicopter fell approximately 1,400 feet to an altitude of about 1,000 feet over the ground at a descent rate of 8,220 feet per minute. I'm on my last page. After regaining control, the number 2 engine experienced an uncommanded in-flight shutdown, and the flight controls became very hard to manipulate. I think the hydraulics went, because I think this type of helicopter is not meant to go inverted. During the descent, rapid right rotation to the right, pilots unable to arrest the descent, and after several rotations, collided with trees, came to rest as we saw it. So that's the type of fact-finding statements we're looking for, and then we end up pushing out findings such as this. So this is one of the findings, causal and contributory. As a result, the main rotor blades contact and severed the tail rotor drive shaft. Another one, number 2 engine shut down, which reduced fuel flow and then reduced main rotor speed, and then yaw control was lost. That's about it for accident investigation. This is the sales pitch on the TSB. We have key issues that we're looking across the transportation industry. Those in blue are the air ones. We've got safety and fatigue management in that apply to everyone, as with regulatory surveillance, commercial fishing safety for the Marines, and then a few rail ones as well. We have a security task program. I think there's a few flyers around the scene. That's a confidential reporting system. If you see anything unsafe in the aviation industry or in the operation of aircraft or the fixing of aircraft, you can give us a call there, send us an email, complete confidential, and we talk with respected agents at Transport Canada to try and find a way to identify the issue and bring it forward. And then you can follow us on all the social media tools that I know none of, maybe Facebook and a bit of LinkedIn, but the other 3 I don't know. And our website, it's all good. That's it. Questions? If there's no questions, that's even better.
Testing? Okay. Well, yeah, too bad for you, GP. You won't be able to get out of this one. So I have a question for you. So we saw 2 accidents, 2 different ones. So you mentioned at the beginning, most of the time, pilot or human factor that is involved in the accidents. With the rising of technologies, autonomous systems, how do you think this can impact the safety of flying?
Well, so we're not seeing too many autonomous type of occurrences yet. The only thing I can maybe compare it to is our transition from push-pull rods, flight control systems, to the fly-by-wire stuff. I know in the military we had a lot of growing pains with the Cormorant helicopter and fly-by-wire, with the Globemaster, and with the new technologies coming in, with an aircrew population that is used to old school type flying, and the learning curve is extremely, if not exponentially higher with new technologies. Doesn't mean that technology is going to save the day, because at the end there's an operator in there somewhere. I know the autonomous part is taking that operator out of the picture. Personally, I'm not. I don't have the warm fuzzy yet that that those flights. But the jury's out, right? That those flights can be conducted safely in all the environmental conditions that we currently fly. For sure, it will help. I'm sure. I personally think we're going to need somebody somewhere to make a decision. If that's the case, then we're opening it up to a whole bunch of human error things. The TSB has gone through great lengths in trying to get rid of the blame game of, it was pilot error or stuff like that. And we try and write our findings in our reports to avoid blaming people. We don't want to blame. So with the with the autonomous part, I see that as the next step of that exponential technology curve where we went from push rods to fly-by-wire. Well, now the next curve is probably the autonomous flight stuff. I don't know if that answers, but that's my two thoughts.
What I'm hearing is that obviously it's going to help in some aspects of flight safety, but it's probably going to bring new challenges that are not in the current, let's say, radar of your investigations.
I think so. We don't know what we don't know, and a lot of times when we're looking at an accident, that's the thing. The crew or the operators are doing the best job they can at the time with the information they have at the time. Like no one wakes up to say, "Hey, I'm going to have a crash today," but there's still a learning curve, and I think even in that domain, I think it's going to be really important that we walk before we crawl and run.
Thank you. So we have some time for more questions from the crowd. Anyone has a question for GP? Yes, Wes.
To piggyback on Olivier's question, are you getting involved at all in with the certification of new, more autonomous systems, of taking the inputs that you've built of an accident and putting them into an autonomous system to see how if the autonomous system would have behaved differently than the pilot, or is that not part of your mandate?
No, we're not. That's not part of our mandate. Two, I don't think we're resourced or staffed to be supporting that currently. As much as we have investigators that would like to be like proactive and forward-looking and help companies to improve for the next 5 to 10 years, our current mandate is really reactive. We're really only a reactive organization that comes in after the fact, and only if there's been an accident that we're going to investigate. So unless Duff starts talking to us at the NRC and says, "Okay, we need TSB involved here," we're not there yet.
So do we have any other question from the crowd? Yes, Chantal.
So how much are you collaborating or coordinating with the OEM investigator like Benoit?
So all the time. So as soon as there's an occurrence, we get an aircraft type. We've got a contact with the OEM right there. That OEM, that person is typically designated as an observer that we can bring along. So they form part of the team, not necessarily the core TSB investigative team, but they do belong to my team in that I'm going to need information. I'm going to need the aircraft flight manual. I'm going to need the maintenance manual on whatever procedure, and he's my direct contact to get all that information. I think his next presentation is going to kind of explain how he fits into helping us trying to figure out, because we don't have that information. We don't have all the data. The OEMs have it. The operators have it. So that's why we identify observers, give them that special status for them to help us in the investigation.
Hey, sir, thank you. Thank you for your service, by the way. I'd like to know if the first event you described, the one with the Bell 214, the one where the main rotor actually severed the tail boom from the helicopter,
yep.
If that event would have occurred 1,000 feet higher, would the outcome of the report be different?
Why? If they could have kept their speed up, maybe the vertical fin could have kept them flying. I think what happened here is they came in, they got slow below the 40 knot range, and then after that everything becomes uncontrollable, right? So, but I don't know. I wasn't there. Benoit was there. Apparently the aircraft rolled twice.
Yeah, so the aircraft rolled twice, almost inverted, so in nose diving, cut the tail rotor, but once that occurred, the pilot just flew towards the island. He had the clearings. He said, "I'm going to go there," but then found out he lost tail rotor. So at that point, until then, he didn't know he had lost his tail rotor or yaw control. And since this is when the air started rotating, and you just auto-rotated to the trees. So you had no options.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure it would have changed anything. Had his actions changed? Maybe, I don't know.
Thank you for the question. Any other question?
No.
We still have some time for one last question. Okay, so I'll close off with the last question for you, GP. Who is your favorite pilot on this picture?
Whoa. It's all me. I'm like by. Yeah, bottom left, exactly.
Bottom left. All right, thank you very much. Okay, a round of applause for GP, guys. All right, so that concludes the first half of our program. So we're going to be taking 10 minutes. So it is 7:30. So we'll be starting again at 7:40 for the second part of the program with Benoit. So take a washroom break, take some beer, have some food, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you. All right. Okay, so in our first part of the presentation, we had the, let's say, government and regulation side of, their angle, right? Their perspective on the take. So right now we're going to have one of the other side, the other angle. So we're going to go into the industry. So we're going to have Benoit from Bell. So he's going to be talking again on flight safety. And again, having more, this time, the OEM angle. So Benoit is the Principal Flight Safety Officer and Air Safety Investigator at Bell Textron Canada in Mirabel. He's been with the company for a long time, and he has 34 years of experience in aerospace and commercial aviation. He currently oversees all of Bell Textron Canada's aviation safety, including the safety management system, the aircraft emergency plan coordination, and all the accident investigations. Previously, he was BTCL's quality manager, and he also worked at Bombardier Aerospace as a quality assurance coordinator, and he was also minister's delegate for the CRJ 700 and 900 jets. Benoit began his career as an aircraft maintenance engineer and pilot, and was president of the Quebec's AME Symposium for 5 years. He holds a certificate in administration from UQO and is certified aircraft maintenance specialist from ENA as well. So please welcome Benoit.
Thank you, Olivier. Great presentation. Yeah, I saw the GP's slide on the pilots and was thinking, how can you tell who's a pilot in the room? Just don't worry, they will tell you. But I was in Mirabel 3 years ago at the first air show when they came back. There was this young kid. I was at a booth with Quebec Aeronature. Anyways, talking to people, and this kid comes in and says, "Hey, my name is Dan Probably. I'm first officer." "Oh, I'm Benoit. I'm captain." He says, "Oh yeah, when do you fly?" "Well, actually, you know the C-30 from the Air Force, Hercules? I fly a C-172. Couldn't stop laughing after that. But poor kid. All right, so my role at Bell is flight safety officer, so mainly overseeing the flight operations, also sometimes the flood program and the operational activities, but I'm doing air accident investigation as a part-time. We have 3 dedicated resources in Fort Worth, Texas, doing this full-time, but I'm doing probably like 3-4 accidents a year. My plate is already full. So today I'm going to explain to you a little bit how Bell or the OEM gets involved in an accident. So a bit of the ICAO and X13, International Civil Aviation Organization, based in Montreal. How can Bell support the investigations or the investigators, and also a review of a case analysis, also with some different Bell signatures on parts. So what's behind the report actually, with all the work being done in lab. And then the question period. So from the regulatory point of view, the ICAO and X13, there's every state participating in an investigation is allowed to appoint an ACREP, as JP explained prior. So the ACREP also is entitled to have an advisor to help him understanding some of the contributors. So the ACREP also is allowed or should be permitted access to the investigation site or lab reconstruction. So this is from the regulatory point of view. And the ACREP and advisors also need to provide all the information that is relevant to the accident to the investigator in charge. And also we cannot discuss any ongoing investigation also with any members. We cannot provide, hey, I think this is what happened, and start discussions like that. So this is confidential. So we're bound to it. And if we don't respect that, we might be thrown out of an investigation. So it's important to keep that very close to the group. Unless there's a need to know for the business point of view, we can also ask permission to share some information, but they are driving the show, not Bell. We're supporting the investigation. So how that works is there's a country of accident. So it could be Mexico, for example. They will nominate an investigator in charge, could be assisted by other investigators. They will send a notification to the other countries, like the ones for the OEM, for example. Also the state of registry. So it could be a US aircraft built in Canada that had an accident in Mexico, and could be an operator from Zimbabwe, I don't know. It's all these countries are allowed to participate. And then each country will nominate an ACREP. So in this case here, for Canada, is the TSB as an ACREP. And Bell is the technical advisor supporting both the ACREP and the investigator in charge. So this is the link, how we get involved into the investigations. And same for the engines. Sometimes you get the US engine with a Canadian aircraft, and sometimes you have the French engine with Canadian aircraft, or a US aircraft with a Canadian, like the 212 and 214. They're Pratt & Whitney engines in there with type certificate in the US for the airframe. So it's the NTSB as an ACREP, and we support the NTSB as well. Okay, 3 ways we can help the authorities investigate their accident. Is we can go on site either before removal or after removal of the wreckage. So we can do also follow-on work with lab reconstruction investigations. We do have a Bell Field Investigation Lab in Fort Worth, Texas. We also have various labs at Bell. We can help investigate, do functional testing. We can do simulation, recreation. If we have the data, we can reproduce an accident. We can do simulation as a video and stuff like that. And also we can do some remote support. Like we need a flight manual, a maintenance manual, so we can provide the information, or system engineering will come in and provide an opinion on what he's seeing with the accident. So we have a couple of capabilities other than the support in field or in the lab. We can do failure analysis, crack growth analysis, dimensional inspections. We have all the system specialists at Bell that can support all technical publications from TechPubs. We have also other engineering reports when we tested components originally. We have all the manufacturing data to support the product. It could be from a supplier point of view as well, so we can provide, or we can get that information. We do also acoustical analysis, simulation, so recreation as well. So we have a copter simulation with data. We can reproduce the flight. We'll see that in a minute. And also we do some non-destructive testing, destructive testing, or avionics. I work often with Derek at the lab. He comes to Mirabel. We do some downloads on Garmin's, on ACA display, Rogers and Kratos, so we can do all that in Mirabel as well. And we provide training on the Bell signatures to the, like we do that in Oklahoma City for the NTSB and other regulators as well. So this is an idea of our copter simulation. So it's not like a full view simulator. We have that also, but we can recreate the current representation of what the aircraft did, and then we can come up with some results. This would be like main rotor tip blade fluctuations. So depending of the movement of the pitch of the aircraft, it will induce something else. So we have that. We also do spectrograms. So we know our frequencies. This is proprietary data. I need a beer. But we can tell from the spectrogram that this aircraft was actually in ground idle at the beginning, then spools up, there's a flight. So if there's one frequency that disappears from radar here, we can tell exactly what system or what failed in that process. Sometimes we have 1 or 2 different frequencies for like a tail rotor or a main rotor or something like that. So we can tell right away this frequency starts missing at that moment in time. So we can reproduce that. So, and that can actually come from a camera or a CVR. We're not allowed to listen to a CVR, but if they can segregate the voice from the noise, we can get the noise portion and do some simulation or analysis. And often we're not talking to pilots or witnesses. Normally, this is the TSB doing that. And Bell is actually supporting the technical portion, so we're not there to determine a cause or we remain factual on the aircraft. TSB will provide the cause and the recommendations as well. So we have a direct email, flight safety at bellflight.com, or a phone line 24 hours where we can support the authorities. We're not there to support a private operator. So if you need help, that needs to go through the TSB first. So that brings me to the case analysis. It was a 206 L4 7-seat aircraft. This aircraft was in Lac Saint-Jean in 2020, January 2020. This is the TSB report. It's public. It's been released. The accident occurred on January 22nd, 2020, and the report, just shy of 2 years, was released to the public with all the information. The pilot was severely injured, and there's some pictures in there. I was given the okay, in fact, to present here with some pictures. Some are not from the TSB, but from the operator. But since it's a non-commercial reproduction, their link is here. You can actually go and get the report directly on the TSB website with the number. So it was Service Aérien Gouvernemental, and this aircraft was modified with the Twin Ranger conversion, the STC with 2 Allison C-20R engines. So it's a twin helicopter. A bit small to read for you guys, but basically the day before there were some snowmobilers, the French snowmobilers with a guided tour that went through the lake. They went missing, so they dispatched 2 aircraft, Bell 206 Jet Ranger, a 206B, and a 206 L4 twin to the site to do the air search. And at some point decided, okay, 1 aircraft sufficient, the other one can return home. There was a little snag on the door, so he needed to fly back to St. Hubert. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, light already fading a little bit. So the pilot took off to Latuque to refuel and then St. Hubert. That was the plan. And about 7 minutes into the flight, the helicopter crashed into the frozen snow-covered surface of the lake, unfortunately. But the pilot was able to egress, call for support, dispatch the helicopter, and sent the guy to Roberval at the hospital. And about that, and the ELT, the emergency locator transmitter, activated. Trenton got the message, but there was already some support on site, which was good. So this is the helicopter the day after, once the TSB got on site. Took a picture, and we see there's the debris are sparsely dispersed on the ground on the lake. Basically, this is the aircraft was coming from the south in the morning, so along the edge of the lake towards Saint-Henri-Taillon, north of Lac Saint-Jean, and did some search in the upper right corner for snowmobilers, and then at some point refueled the aircraft, took off about 2 o'clock, came back, and at some point there's a group of islands. The pilot decided to shift outbound a little bit, direct to Latuque. Well, right after that, there was an accident. This is the impact site for the accident. Kind of important in the report section. For the return flight also, the pilot was supposed to fly low, like 500 feet. There was also a headwind component, so needed to stay low, and also went offshore after that. So on board, there were 2 altimeters on the aircraft. One was a radar altimeter, the other one a conventional altimeter. So the second one is mandatory, but first one is optional. But in this case, the radar altimeter has a little select bug. So you can select a minimum altitude if you want. For IFR approaches, where when you come down, you have to be out of the clouds by a certain altitude. If you're not, you have to overshoot. But the Service Aérien Gouvernemental had procedures, so you need to select the bug if you're en route to about 100 feet. So this is your minimum altitude. If you're over a lake, 50 feet. So in this case, it could have been 50 feet, but at least you have a light and a warning that you're at that altitude at that moment. and the other is a conventional altimeter. The altimeter was set to 30.13 inches of mercury, so the atmospheric pressure, but the current pressure in Alma, right next to the airport, next to the accident site, was about 30.08. Seems minor, but that 0.05, when you're low, it's about 50 feet over estimation of your altitude. So this was not used. The radar altitude bug was at 0, and this altimeter was at a little high. As far as weather, it was VFR. If you know, it's VFR means visual flight rules. So it means you can visually see your surroundings. IFR means if I'm a VFR pilot, so I follow the road, but it's instrument flight rules. But so the weather, our visibility was 25 miles. The temperature was good. There were clouds, broken clouds at 3,000 feet. And the winds, there was a headwind of 15 knots gusting 25, so slowing down the aircraft a little bit. Called from some freezing temperature, but there was nothing encountered during the return flight. Lighting conditions, we're going to talk a bit about diffuse lighting or flat light, same thing. It's when it reduces shadows and contrast when you look at an area. Since the light was fading a little bit, we'll see a picture. So the first picture on the left is the day of the accident. So we can see with the clouds and the snow-covered lake, you can see the shore, but it's not very clear. While this is the next day, you really see the details. The perception is easier to reveal. So even though weather was great, visibility was great, but this is what diffuse light is. Some people would confuse that with the whiteout. The whiteout is when you're engulfed in a glow. If you're landing, approaching a lake with light snow and comes up, and then with the clouds and the lake and the snow around you, or blowing snow while en route, then you can just lose complete visibility. But in this case, it was really flat light. And there's a bit of a definition here. So it's a partial whiteout, or you're just losing some 3D perception, really. Even though it looks good, it might not be that good. So the fact that the pilot went offshore a little bit, lost some of the references on the ground. The next picture will show you a bit the difference with the pilot, what he did. So I'll show you. So there's two spots on the map here that the TSB took in the simulation. So this was the actual position of the aircraft, about 2.4 miles from shore. And this is what you see when you're at 300 feet, or 330 feet that the pilot was. And this is the same view at 50 feet. Not much difference, right? It's the same view, exactly the same view. So different to see the difference with the flat light. And the next one below, it's 0.3 nautical miles from shore. So flying 300 feet, you can see the shore. You have a good reference on the side view. Once you're at 50 feet, then you're pretty much the same. So you know you're flying low in that conditions. So there's some warnings issued by the FAA and other authorities, but when you have this, even when visual reference seems to be good, it might not be safe to flight, and your depth perception is poor, but also check your altimeter. Do not descend below a certain point. You have to stick to your references that you have in the cockpit. Now, the aircraft speaks to us, and I'm not crazy here. So you have to look for evidence on the aircraft, and often when people start investigating or you're on a site, got two parts here, and then look at the parts. Oh, we'll see how these parts fit together. They start banging parts together, then you lose some of the evidences from these parts when you do that. So we shall never touch any parts together. You can look at them, you can do this like that, but never contact any parts together, because you might lose some good critical information. And so in the couple images that will follow, we have a couple of Bell signatures. So they are specific sometimes to the Bell 206L4. And you can have a different fracture if you're on another model, like the 26 Jet Ranger will be totally different. But you gain that with experience. So this is the drone view of the accident. Came again from the TSB. So we have some impact mark on the top right corner. And then you start seeing debris all along route and the aircraft right here. So we have a skid gear here, a main rotor down below here, about 130 feet from the fuselage. The tail is off the picture actually on this one. So we can tell there was a good horizontal velocity on that aircraft. If it would have been a vertical impact, all the parts would be just scattered around the aircraft. Depending on the velocity, it might be a little wider, but it would be all concentrated. But in this case, it's all spreaded. So we understand it was a high horizontal velocity and a shallow angle when the aircraft hit the ground. So that's typical of what they call a CFIT, or a control flight into terrain. So the pilot never noticed he was coming down. It was 300 feet. He came down, and a few minutes later, he was on the ground. Now the airframe. So thank you to designers and engineers for your help here. So what we want in an aircraft is save everybody's life as much as possible, the crew and passengers. So the airframe is so robust that they will take some of the kinetic energy during an accident, transfer that to a mechanical energy. So we want that energy be spread around the aircraft, and so there will be fracture, there will be stuff will break, but that's what we want. We want to save someone's life in there. And also, like from stats point of view, the FAA said from 1983 to 2000, there were about 96% of accidents were survivable, they were non-fatal, and this rate is also increasing, improving actually, which is key in that. So this is the aircraft. First, the cockpit. We completely lost the nose of the aircraft, so we had to cut some wires. It was hanging in front, but with the impact, the nose took off. This is the cargo compartment here. There's a lot of big fractures in there, so that energy started spreading within the aircraft. And the tail, we look at this funny angle here with the tail boom. So the main rotor actually struck the tail boom while rotating, so cut the tail. This is the belly of the aircraft. So again, a couple of bumps in the belly, which brings the impact, and the energy within the aircraft. This is a ruler that we put across here. So there was about 2.5 inches of bump within the belly, and which is not how I've seen worse than that. But again, the energy, the pilot seat, there's a web here made of aluminum, thin aluminum. It's made to compress when we have an accident, so we can save the pilot's butt as much as possible, so we can see that deformation, though that's designed for that. Sometimes you have seats with shocks or springs that can reduce the impact as well. The more you compress the seat, the more forces are required. But that's also part of survivability. Another beer. Crash design. All right, and then main rotor, we see the impact with the tail, the angle that reveals that, yeah, there was an impact. Also, a couple of signature. When you look at the blade like that, it didn't seem to have a great impact with power on this one, but we have marks, we can match the two that was a tail boom strike with the main rotor blade, but this one really hit hard, so we can tell already that there was some power on that blade when it hit an object. Most probably the ground, we don't know yet, but this is what blade that had an impact with a lot of power. We can tell that it hit hard. This is the mast of the aircraft, or going to the main rotor hub and blade. The fracture was on top of the main transmission, and you look at the angles on the fracture. This is typical of an overload when it impacted, and also the mast is bent as well, so that reveals also that, yeah, there was quite an overload. And in the case of Jet Ranger, same on the 505, this is typical. If I fly a Jet Ranger, I get the same impact. The fracture will be on top, right near the main rotor hub. And this is like, we see that all the time. So you take a couple of Jet Ranger accidents, they all fracture at the same place. 206s at the base of the mast near the transmission. Also, a D-shaped form like this, also typical of an overload condition with the swash plate. Again, base of the mast. We see the angle, about 45-degree angle. So we can look at if there was some fatigue, but this is obvious that's an overload, not fatigue. So we'll see a different striation within the fracture. And this is a 206B Jet Ranger. So this is the main rotor hub, like reversed, and this is the impact. Same on the 204, 205, 212s. You'll get the same thing here, same signature, same area. Again, typical for Bell. So you gain that with experience. You talked about mass bumping earlier with the 212, so these hub stops will contact when there's a high flapping of the main rotor in flight. We have some flap restraint when the rotor is not turning or very, very slow or not turning at all, that will stop the main rotor. The stops here will not contact, but when you're in flight and this is spinning fast, then the flap restraint will go away and then you can come in contact when there's an event like that. Drive shaft, so that's the main or power shaft, they call it, or the main drive shaft, a K-flex shaft. So it's connected, still connected with the transmission, still connected with the freewheel on the engine. But if you look closely, you'll see there's some rubbing marks, rotation marks on the shaft. So it means that the engine and transmission were both driving together. So it probably rubbed here at some point during the accident event, but we know there was some rotation at that point. Did I skip? Sorry. Okay. Tail rotor, again, we look at these blades. They're not deformed. There's a bit of a fracture here, but basically the two tail rotor blades are almost intact. So no deformation. There was a contact between the blade and the tail boom, so it was obvious because the mark matched the blade exactly. So we understand that. But if I look at a blade that impacted the ground with power, it'll look more like that. So again, typical of impact blades that had power, this will look like that more than a straight blade like this. So big deformation and crushing. That's my favorite. We call the cigarette test, not very popular these days with the new stuff, but what we do here is we simulate a drive shaft by rolling a cigarette or a piece of paper like that. So you take it around. In that case, the sense of rotation would be clockwise, like that. So if I stop the tail rotor from turning, I'll turn my piece of paper, I will get something exactly like that on the picture. So that tells me that this tail rotor stopped before the main rotor. If I do the opposite and my tail rotor is still spinning, I'll get exactly the opposite. And then I can tell that the main rotor stopped before the tail rotor. So this is also very simple if you want to try it. I've got some couple of paper here. But again, an easy way to find out. So the aircraft speaks to us, just take a look, do the cigarette test, and we took a picture of that. Maryse was there with me as well when we did the investigation. But yeah, that's what we do. Another occurrence like that, we see the twist on the tail rotor is a lot worse, but we can tell whichever came first. Flight controls, again, typical fractures on the pitch links. When there's an overload, they will fracture at the base of the treads, or sometimes the 206 Jet Ranger, there's a little shallow on the pitch link, will fracture on top of the treads. So this is where the fracture will occur during an overload sequence. Typical, we see that also very often. Sometimes we see a pitch link that will fracture in the middle, or it's twisted like 180 degrees. And I saw one in front that was connected, but was actually 180 degrees to its normal position. So yes, that happens. And we see that the rod is bent a little bit, the threads on the fork end. So typical of an overload. Skid gear also, they speaks a lot. If we look at the skid gear, there's a little bit of a shallow bump in the forward cross tube. So I mean there was some impact with the ground on that skid gear. We can measure we can take the measurement between the two skids and confirm if what's the spread of the gear, so if the impact was hard or not. In this case, we had just over 2 inch difference. So meaning the vertical impact on the skid gear was not that high compared to a real vertical impact. This is a skid gear that had a high velocity impact, like vertical. The skid gear is spreaded. I've seen some skid gear like way up here. They will fracture, of course, near the saddles here, like here. But we see this is also typical of the accident sequence. We understand that. Other fractures that we're seeing on the skid gear. Now helmets. So some pilots fly commercially with helmets. Good thing. So if you look at this helmet, there was a major impact to the back of the pilot's head that probably saved his life, actually, in that accident. So otherwise, he would have been probably unconscious, or it would have been fatal, probably. But This helmet saved this pilot life. Although it's not required in their procedure for SAG, this pilot was wearing a helmet anyway, and we do that as well with Bell on the production line. We do wear helmets for our flights, so if something happens, you know, you can really change your life or change everybody else's life around you as well. So TSB highlighted the importance of that. That was one of the recommendations as well from the report. And in conclusion, on that accident, even though visibility was great, 25 nautical miles, the flat light was changing the pilot's perception. He was not able to recognize that, although he had some training on it. And so that was not sufficient to eliminate the risk of the accident actually, because it occurred. So it was impossible for him to see the shoreline at that point. It was too far out. So and there was also no indication of any pre-existing mechanical damage on that aircraft during the lab inspection. So it was really an unexpected descent, resulted in a C-fit accident, controlled flight into terrain. And luckily the pilot survived. And also we did this kind of a safety stand down with our pilots at Bell discussing this event. And also we look at human factors in an accident. And the one that stands out also is get home eitis, they call it in English, but you really want to get home. It was 2 o'clock, the light was down about 4 o'clock, he had to be in St. Hubert. So he was on a timer, this pilot, to get home. So sometimes the decision will vary a little bit depending. If you had all day, you know, to fly, we would have probably get along the side of the lake shore would be good. But in that case, sometimes you take decision because you know you're rushed, you want to get home. Even if it's dark, you say, oh, I'm just going to continue, I'm only 15 minutes away. That could change your life. It's also lack of knowledge on flat light resources. He had a radar altimeter he could use, he didn't use it. Lack of awareness on the situation. Norms also, he was not using radar altimeter all that time because they were all often flying low, doing around the terrain, but it would have been good to use it. And the lighting condition. So I'm done. Any questions? Sure, you do have one.
Thank you, Benoit.
Thank you.
So, first question. So we saw in GP's presentation that when they investigate, they will come out with a report and have a multiple investigation. Sometimes some of them apply to the OEM. So that's one way the OEM can participate making flight safer. Then you also showed that per design, we can also make aircraft more safer. For example, by the design, you can absorb shocks. Is there any other way OEM can make flying safer?
Sure. When we learned from accidents, this is the intent with all these recommendations made by the TSB. But even though in the course of an accident, if we find something that seems wrong, we'll take action immediately so we can get our engineers to work on a solution. We provide a service bulletin that will correct the fleet. And I've seen issues like a 505 in California where the collective stick fractured. So during the weekend, we did the service bulletin, the alert service bulletin, and the AD with Transport Canada. It was issued on Monday. Everybody had it. So this is like a quick answer to an event that occurred in the US. But yes, we do take actions when we feel there's a safety issue. We will connect and provide a resolution for it.
Thank you. Is there any question from the crowd? Right here.
I have one. If we are engineer, we participate to a flight test, and we saw something. What's the rule for the engineering? What has been imposed? What we have to say? Who we talk with when we saw a problematic on the flight? And what is the step-by-step that the engineer should do when he saw something like any problems or any problematic?
Yep. I have an answer to that, and the other one is for you. But at Bell, we have a safety management system that is recognized by Transport Canada. This is the first in the country and the only one yet. So there's some rules. We did a voluntary participation with Transport to get approved, or recognized, I should say, not approved yet, because the regulation is not enforced. But we do report all these events, like within Bell, we submit that, and then once we're done, we send that to Maryse. She creates an SDR to notify Transport Canada of the issue. It could be a fleet issue. It could be something that we had in production. We have a safety board, so we take care of the event internally. and we share with Transport Canada, and we communicate back and forth. The second part for you, I can talk about it a bit, but you can actually report directly to TSB an event. So they have a website, they have a direct line, they have the Securitas information, so you can report directly, call the NTSB or Trenton, but it will get to them for the accident investigation. So I'm responsible also for the coordination of an emergency plan within Bell. So if we do have an accident, then I will get involved, but I will call them first, and they will tell me what to do with the aircraft. Can I remove the aircraft from the highway or wait for someone to get there? So this exchange is live at the beginning, and I cannot talk to media neither. That's not my job, that's their job. So even though if it's a Bell aircraft and we're there, we saw everything, I cannot talk about potential cause. I need to talk to him. He will talk to media. We can support the investigation. This is what we can offer, but that's the way the system works. Right? Right?
So it goes back to the Catesby Act. So whenever there's an accident, typically the coroner will have, if there are fatalities, the coroner will have control of the site, the police obviously, and then it falls to us. The police are very quick to give us the site because they don't have the aviation experience and they don't want to deal with what they have to deal with. But the Catesby Act gives us those powers to secure the site and to control the information that comes in and out. And as he said, play along as an OEM, as an observer, as a technical. Everything's confidential. Everything's kept in house. Second something slides or something's released, then you're persona non grata and you're kicked off the team, sort of thing. But that doesn't happen often.
And it's the same for, we work a lot with the engine OEMs. We're both actually called often on these accidents, or if there's another system involved, we can call somebody else or another manufacturer. But we work a lot with the engine manufacturers. So often on site we'll be with Pratt or we'll be with Rolls-Royce or Safran and Bell. So we all work together. So it's common to work together. Sometimes in Longueuil they do some engine inspections, tear down. So we often go and participate with them as well. But yeah.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, Chantal.
So more from a career perspective, and we've talked together, Benoit, before, but I would like you to share what, if someone is interested in becoming an investigator, what are the prerequisites, or how do you get there?
Okay, I guess walk on water first, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's experience, it's interest as well from personal or people. But if you had a pilot degree or engineering degree or a mechanical degree, you can actually apply. You can go and take courses. There's some in the U.S., there's some in the Air Force, Canadian Air Force. And Martin here was replacing me as a flight safety officer, but he's actually the flight safety officer on the 412 Griffin or CF program. And he took the training for accident investigation as well. So there's courses out there that we can attend and participate, and you just have the opportunity sometimes to talk to the right person, and you'll trace the line. So that's basically what I did. I've done the course. I did my training in Florida University, and then talked to Tony Randall. I said, yeah, I lost an investigator. I need someone. Let's try it. He says, okay, we'll go with 3 times with another investigator just to gain experience and see how it goes. The guy said, hey, this guy is a mechanic. He knows better than me, so he's off the hook. So it took 2 times, and I was off to solo investigations. But yeah, it starts with interest, actually.
Thank you for the question. Any other question here? So I have a question for you, maybe. I'm curious. I think we have a lot of pilots in the room. Did any bad thing ever happen to you? Do you have, if it did, or if you were able to, not go into a bad action because you took measures before? Any personal experience that maybe someone would like to share? I'm looking at you, Patrick. Counting on you here.
Go to Patrick.
All right.
Patrick has one. Hey?
Well, obviously, as a pilot, my career has been going on now for almost 30 years, and I had the chance to fly many different type of aircraft. I have a notable situation where, and this is really, really interesting. I was ferrying an aircraft that was an R-44 in 2007. I took it in the Cayman Islands, and I was bringing it around. I had to cross over to Haiti and then the Caribbean, up to Florida, and then up to Montreal. And everything was going well. This aircraft was about 350 hours, so it was fairly new. And my last leg over the water, it was equipped with floats. So, and we had a raft. And I was not used to doing those water operations. So I was thinking, okay, this raft, let's say we have to ditch. I have emergency floats, obviously, but if the sea is rough and the aircraft flips over, what's going to happen? So I found the rope and hooked the raft to the airframe of the aircraft to make sure that if the aircraft rolls over, it still floats, and then I bring out the raft, and I'm in the water dangling on the skid, and it's windy, and I inflate the raft goes away, so I need to attach it to, so a lot of things like that came to mind, but none of that happened. And on my, obviously, and happily, and on my last leg to cross over to Florida from Nassau, I think, I had some electrical problems, which is super rare. So one of our electrical system, the governor of the engines started to be erratic, and it actually stopped working. So this is super rare, but I'm over the water, so it's really interesting. And I'm like, okay, we still can do control manual and continue on to Fort Lauderdale. So I take the decision of continuing. But then maybe 5 minutes after, and this I think was my sixth sense, I was scanning for other problems. And I never do that in flight, but I had a look at the breaker panel, which was right in front of my seat, and there was the transponder breaker that popped. And now I'm like, okay, this is super weird. Two systems that are not interconnected. They have nothing to do together, those systems, but they're both offline. And I'm over the water. And this is where it's really interesting. I look in the water and there's sharks there. And I'm not bringing this just to dramatize the story, but sharks, I'm like, damn, this is strange. So we turn around, there's islands, Bimini Islands, right back a couple of miles behind us, and I go there to circle. And now I'm puzzled by making the decision of landing there, and I'm obviously going to be stuck there for a couple of days. My wife and kids were waiting back home, so I had this get-home-itis. And so I flew over the island maybe 10 minutes. There was an airport I could have landed. And I thought, okay, nothing worse is happening, no smell, electrical fire, something like that. So I took the decision of continuing to Fort Lauderdale, where I landed. And we discovered that by removing the breaker panel, there was wires that were installed. There was a loop in the wires, and it was pressed. It was pressed in between the box and the frame of the aircraft, and those wires chafed. So 350 hours after the manufacture of this aircraft, over the water with sharks, that's when that problem occurred, you know. So that's one of my situations, which was really interesting and kind of mind-boggling as well. So you never know, and this is something I like to do at Bell, is to talk to people and tell them that their job as working and building this aircraft is so important for months and years, like it could be 20 years after the manufacture of an aircraft that problems arise because of errors in manufacturing, you know, so we have quite a job to do.
Thank you for sharing your story, Patrick. And sorry for putting you on the spot, but there was a purpose to it. So the purpose was actually that, just to recall everyone, that aircraft safety is a matter of everyone. Everyone here is responsible for making flying safe. It starts with the engineers, there's the mechanics, there's the pilots, and there's everyone else involved in making the aircraft flying. So always remind yourself about that. It can be anyone, and it happens to everyone. And I'm sure that these two guys can back what I'm saying here. So
you forgot the investigator as well.
Yeah, the investigators as well. All right, so that was the end for our second part. So we've seen two sides of the story. Oh yeah, first, a big round of applause for Benoit. Thank you, Benoit. All right, so yeah, so first we had the government and regulation side. We saw the OEM perspective after, and I hope that now we're all a bit more educated on helicopter safety and just flying safety in general. To finish up, we're going to be taking just a step back and going back to our Vertical Flight Society. So before you leave, we just want to make you aware of our upcoming events. So we have our Forum 81, which is the annual forum that will be taking place this year in Virginia Beach. Each year, it's 250 more technical papers that are submitted, professionals that come from very different backgrounds, from engineering to pilots to everyone here in the industry. There's some short course sometime, for example, on VTOL technology. They usually offer a tour of an industry place on the Friday. Last year, for Mirabel, they came to the factory and visited the floor. And you have a discounted rate if you want to go until April 21st. And it's a good opportunity to meet people, professionals. And we highly recommend that you consider going. Finally, we have the Lichten Award. So this is more education focused. So this is an initiative to push people to present a paper for the first time to the forum. So if you're a grad student, or you know someone who's a grad student, or if you're doing your bachelor and you're in some student club and you've done some technical background stuff, you can write a paper, you can submit it, send it to us, and we'll nominate one person for the region of our local chapter. And you can win full access to the forum for free. And the big winner gets all travel fees covered. So there will be a competition on January 15th at Bell, and there will be more detail on this to follow. Another subject is our upcoming chapter elections. So all our members got about 2 weeks ago an email saying that there was upcoming elections. So we have 4 elected positions. We have the president, which is currently Tuva, and the interim Wes, vice president, treasurer, secretary, administrator, and we have a few appointed positions which are not elected but are appointed by the elected board. So we have an education chair, membership chair, publicity chair, web director, etc. So my message here is that if you guys care about the vertical flight industry, if you guys have time, if you guys want to help, reach out to us, talk to an officer in the room, and we're always welcoming more people to help out. So this was my last message for you guys. Thank you very much for coming. So there's 3 people I wanted to thank. So first, our speakers, GP, Benoit, thank you for coming here, making the drive, and presenting on aircraft safety and accidents. There's also Donald Falardeau, our technician, who accepted to come back from his retirement and be the technician here for the night. I talked about the VFS forum, the Lichten Award, our upcoming elections. So with that, I would like to wish everyone a happy holidays, and stay tuned for our next events that will be coming for 2025. Thank you. There will be more networking session. We welcome you to stay, and that will be it. Thank you.